What is going on, guys? It's Jake, aka StarCoding, coming at you with another video where we're talking about computer science. We're wearing the black sweatshirt again, and today we're getting into some security topics. We're talking about honeypots, and I'm looking forward to this. I'm super excited to talk about it. One, because when it comes to honeypots, for me, uh, I've always used them in the name of science and just experimenting with real world attacks. You can go on Azure, you can go on AWS, and you can spin up a machine that's public facing and just have extensive logging and just see what happens to your machine. How many JavaScript payloads are going to be sent to try to explode your front end application? It can be kind of fun, and there's a lot of reports that are done. And if you just think about it, there's I think a 4 billion give or take IP addresses out there. There's probably more. I don't know the exact number, especially with IPv6. But needless to say, it's not hard. It's not, I guess, a dumb idea for attackers to just enumerate over public-facing IP addresses. And so if it's a public-facing web app, like even if you are a nobody, someone is going to find your website and try to have some automated attacks against it. And it's kind of cool to you see those automated attacks, but we're talking about honeypots for intrusion detection in the corporate world. Look at this guy. Very cool, very cool. We got an article by Andy Smith, so another article review coming at you on tracebit.com. And it took my attention. I thought this was a great read, and I wanted to share it with y'all. So let's hop into it. We're not going to read over line by line in this guy. We're just going to kind of summarize some of the main topics. That way I'm giving my take, and that way we're reading a little bit of Andy's take as well. But so why are we talking about honeypots? There was a time back in the day when a security team might be focused entirely on preventing a security incident, like a data breach, from happening. We think two things have changed since this has happened. One, the number of security, let's change this to red, the number of security breaches that have taken place and the technology stack upon which an organization is built has become far too complex and changes far too often to properly reason about, if everything's secure or not, which I absolutely agree. We're talking about these, these tech stacks nowadays that are so dependent upon open source projects or just third-party solutions that, I mean, you're an internet-facing company. You have a web app. The amount of like node and npm dependencies you have, even on the hardware level, you might even be in the cloud. So if there's a cloud exploit that's taking place, if there's a hardware exploit that's taking place, there's a huge area of attack surface that these attackers can get into. And yeah, the number of security breaches published. I mean, it's kind of crazy how many you go on thehackernews.com every day, every other day. There's a pretty substantial public company or pretty big company that's getting hacked. So definitely a lot of stuff happening there. So kind of changing from this, preventing a breach to assuming breach mentality, trying to protect the business, a decent chunk of a security team's time getting spent, blah blah blah, should not happen, or rather, it will only happen if an intrusion has occurred. I kind of like to think of it as like, assuming the breach mentality. I'm not really sure what this is saying off the top of my head, but we're gonna have a sweet spot where, if we properly have a zero trust model at the company, at whatever the business is, essentially, someone can get in, someone can get a foothold into the system. We're assuming worst case, we're assuming that a breach is happening. But if we have this zero trust model, hopefully that attacker can't go to mission critical, to business critical places off the rip. They're probably going to have to launch some extra attacks, some privilege escalation attacks to get access to those extra systems, which means we kind of have a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot between an intrusion occurring and an actual business impact taking place. So we're assuming worst. Someone is hacking the system. They're in, but we have a little bit of time to detect them before actual business impact occurs. And this is kind of what we're looking into. So yeah, we can stop and celebrate if we can find them that time. So this is called detection engineering. That's what Andy is saying. I have not actually looked too much into detection engineering, but I do think that this article is what it's about. Then I'm kind of getting intrigued into the topic here. So one of the problems with detection engineering is going to be the idea of false positives. If we look at these guys, we got false positives, 1 in a million events. But when there's billions of events occurring, these can be quite a lot of false positives. And what the problem is with a false positive, if you think of a false positive, you're like, okay, like, sure, it's a little blimp in the system. If you're doing like error logging, warning logging on like an application, like sure, that's okay if you get some false positives there. But when we're doing like, am I being hacked? You probably don't want a lot of false positives there. One, depending on how your response is, if you have like a run book or a security run book where it's like, okay, we detected, intrusion, that is going to require a bunch of resources now to ensure that, hey, what is happening, what access do they have, kind of thing. Like you're essentially launching a process internally, getting the whole security team up at 3 in the morning to investigate this problem. So having false positives, we want to minimize that as much as possible. So that way, when you do get an alert, like everyone's like, oh snap, here we go. You don't want anyone to be thinking that once they get an alert that it's all automatically going to be a false positive, because there's so many that exist. Yeah, just kind of keeping that alertness going. Important. I think everyone can kind of agree with that. But another thing that's fun about these false positives is that talks about edge cases here. And in theory, you might have some good edge cases as to, if these certain criteria happen, then there's most likely going to be a breach. But as we can see here, an Excel sheet that reaches out to the internet, oh yeah, that's the CFO that needs to use it. An S3 bucket that suddenly has a huge amount of activity, yeah, the sales team needs to trigger a batch job. And we don't know when they're going to run it. So it's one of those things where even if you have some good edge cases in place to where this might be, malicious activity, the people on the other end just might be doing it naturally as the business. And that can be, false positives, lost faith, delusionment, despair. But fear not, it's challenges like these where honeypots for intrusion detection come in. So what is the honeypot? I kind of like looking at this guy in the beginning. I mean, if you think of the bear here as our, which by the way, I need to get my drawing utensil back to normal. It's kind of small as recently. We'll get that bigger in the next video. But we have our hacker being the bear here, doing his mean activity, and the pie is the beautiful honeypot here, attracting wandering hackers, and once they attack it, well, we know they're there. It's kind of like a Venus flytrap almost. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to flip this problem of false positives on its head. Instead of hunting for 1 in a billion events, let's create our own events. And if these events happen, we know for almost like 99%, 99% of the time, like, oh, this should not happen. Like, this absolutely should not happen. And that is the beauty of a honeypot. It flips the pain of figuring out things that should not happen by creating our own. Think of just creating, you got a company, okay, you got production, testing, and dev environments. Let's just create some web apps and some S3 buckets that no one uses. They're just there. They're not used by the actual application, not used by any of the developers in the DevOps process. They're just there. They're just chilling. They do run, and they do have tempting names, like production data 1 or like super secret info 1, something that looks juicy to maybe an outside developer or an outside attacker. I think this is what Andy was talking here is a good idea. If we're looking at Netflix, make the S3 bucket, make the web app look presentable. We are assuming that we're breached at this point. So what would what type of title would get an attacker to actually attack this? EU viewer data, cool. EU production viewer data sensitive. It's kind of like social engineering, but on the flip side. Um, and so we know if we make these things, okay, we know if we make these things, and if we have some certain activity, let's look at this. If something inspects the properties of the bucket, that is freaking suspicious, dude. If someone is listing the contents of the bucket, it has no use at all within the company, and all the developers know not to touch it. Oh, that's freaking suspicious, dude. Oh, we're X-ray vision goggles are going on. We're hopping in the logs here, and we're hunting down some IP addresses. Downloading data from the bucket exists. Holy smokes, guys! We need to actually maybe get some contractors in ASAP to help mitigate this issue. Let's call in CrowdStrike. Let's call in some FireEye. Let's get these. We need a full. Someone's in the system that should not be here, kind of thing, kind of vibe. And what I love about this is confidence. It gives you a lot of confidence that something wrong is happening and we need to act fast. Because you can kind of like second guess yourself sometimes. It's like this looks suspicious, and you might be on the tip of your tongue of like pressing the red button that yes, we are under. There is an intruder in the system that this could get bad, but you don't want to like be the guy that hits that red button when in fact it was someone not using a VPN in the company that was in a Starbucks. Like things like that happen all the time. So yeah, if honeybots are so great, why isn't everyone using them? One, I think it just takes a little bit of extra effort. I feel like a lot of teams have their processes in place. If you're the application security team, you're busy thinking about the application, fixing up those code smells, you know, checking the actual source code, maybe checking the firewall rules and all that jazz. Like teams have their processes in place for the most part, so doing something like this might be a little bit out there, especially if it's something that the team lead hasn't heard of before. But I don't think it takes too long. You just have to kind of like, if you are a cloud-based company, you make some extra resources, have some logging on there, have some security alerts in place out there. And if you have like an on-prem solution, if your company's on-prem, well then yeah, it kind of could be a little technical to get that done. I'm not sure actually how that get done. You could probably, literally make a physical machine at the company available to the internet kind of thing, or on your intranet that would do the same thing kind of thing. This is all having something exposed in your intranet, maybe at the development stage, at the staging stage, or at the production stage, to where if someone touches it, holy smokes, this is bad. So that's kind of like the idea. But for the most part, I think this is just a, detection engineering. Very cool. I love the idea of social engineering the attackers to touch something that, in fact, is a very sticky Venus flytrap and is going to slap them and kind of give away their footprint. Like, oh, they actually are here. So, yeah. Let me know how you think in the comments below, guys. That was honeypots, detection engineering. Do y'all think it's a good idea? Would y'all pay an extra $10, $20, $30 a month on the on the cloud bill for something like this? And if your company already does it, like yeah, if you have any stories below, definitely share. But peace and thanks for watching. Bye.